my best to not go over things that Melissa talked about already, but there is a little bit of an overlap, and I actually am going to reframe the presentation a little bit. But real quickly, I'm also an attorney, as Melissa said. I specialize in medical marijuana law, all things medical marijuana, all day, all night. I think about it when I'm sleeping. And so the other thing that I do, I think that gives me a little bit of a unique perspective in this industry, is that I'm involved in local politics. I serve on the board of directors for the San Diego County Young Democrats. I serve on the board of directors for the Central Committee, which is the governing body of the County Democratic Party. And it's given me a different perspective in terms of how we need to interface with our local politicians to move things forward in a way that's going to allow you guys to operate in compliance with state law, but also federal law. I think that's probably why a lot of you guys are here today, is probably to hear about the new ordinance. Yes? Are the people curious about that? So I know how to best structure my time.
Are you talking about the city council?
Yeah. So
what ordinance?
So basically, I'm going to kind of just build a little bit off of what Melissa said and talk about just some more best business practices. And when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about state compliance, right? I'm building completely off of Melissa's presentation and about how you want to put yourself in the best seat for visiting her office. As she said, it's a reality and it can happen, and it does happen. So you want to, again, make sure that you've done everything you can up until the point to make yourself as in compliance as possible. And that's kind of the big key word right now, compliance. What can I do to be compliant? And it is true. People have sort of fallen off and decided that, well, my friend got arrested anyway, so what's the point? Or all the stores shut down anyway, so what's the point? And I'm going to talk about why the stores shut down and who did it. And it's not the people that need to hire Melissa. The shutdowns were civil, not criminal. And so it's a big mess of misconceptions at this point. So so I'll talk about kind of like a 6th grade civics 101, like who is the mayor and what can he do. City council, we'll talk about the ordinance as well, and how it differs from the old, maybe a little history if there are some people who don't know how we got to this crazy place to begin with. But I will start with the best business practices. This paperwork that we keep talking about, what is it? Honestly, what is she talking about? She keeps referring to paperwork. What do you need? The first thing that you need to do, and we have case law that says that you need to do this and that you want to do this, and think of your defense as like a checklist of things. And you want Melissa to be able to check every single thing off on that piece of paper. So the first thing that you want to do, and it goes back to the question we had in the back, nonprofit versus not-for-profit, you need to incorporate with the California Secretary of State by filing articles of incorporation as a nonprofit mutual benefit corporation. And this is if you're approaching this from a business perspective, and I get this question a lot. I'm not running a business. It's me and my 5 or 6 neighbors, maybe 7 or 8 neighbors, and we want to grow, but we're not going to have a storefront, and we're not looking at distributing to tons of people. That's fine too, and so is a larger collective. As Melissa said, there's case law that's starting to say 1,000 people doesn't mean illegal. What you were doing with those 1,000 people potentially could be legal or illegal. So right now I'm talking again about someone who's approaching this from a business perspective. If you are interested in a smaller grow-op, that's fine. You still want some paperwork, but the cost in terms of legal fees is going to be pretty insignificant compared to complying with state regulation. But you still want to have a collective agreement amongst the patients and some membership forms. But just to be clear, so if you have questions about smaller operations or just you and your 5 or 6 of your buddies, but really it has to just be the smaller operation. The minute that you're thinking about this as a potential business where you intend to potentially derive even a small amount of income from it, you got to come see me. But if you're just talking about me and Melissa are going to grow,
I'm going to suggest this, that once you're collectively engaging in this and it's not just for you and it's just you and your one friend, but the 2 of you are doing it together, I would strongly recommend consulting with an attorney and making sure your paperwork's there, because I've dealt with cases that are ridiculous, should never have come to me for unbelievably small amounts of marijuana, but they still were in my office.
But so, the point is your checklist is different than the business's checklist.
But I would still have some paperwork and still go talk to her.
There are still things we want to draw up for you and things you want to post to the grow site, but again, the difference is as soon as you start moving it outside, and again, you're thinking of making money. And that's okay, guys, by the way. Just because you're operating nonprofit or on a not-for-profit basis, it doesn't mean that you're supposed to labor away for free. What you can make is a reasonable compensation. What's reasonable compensation, Kim? That's an individual conversation that we have to talk about because, Javon Jackson with 1,000+ patients, that's different than the guy I met last Friday who's at this point really 20 or 30 patients. Very different in terms of reasonable compensation. But first and foremost, articles of incorporation, you're going to register with the Secretary of State and you're going to file those suckers and we're going to keep your name off of it and we're going to put my name on because that's public record. And we're not going to name this business, I love the herb. We're not going to name this business, getting high is awesome, right? We're going to think of a name that's professional. We can talk about marketing and how you can still sort of weave it into something cool, but think about your name. People always come to me without a name or any idea of what they're going to do. I'll walk you through it, but it's going to be better if you've thought about these things. Run it like a legitimate business because it is, and that's the defense. Again, that's the defense, is that this is legitimate. So you're going to file with the Secretary of State. Just like any other business, we're going to draw up bylaws for you. Bylaws are an internal document that basically are the blueprint of your business. This is a hugely helpful document for Melissa. The reason why is because I lay out step by step what the laws are and the way that you are complying with them. It's your internal blueprint. What are you doing and what law matches up to that action, right? Then Melissa can enter that into court as evidence, and it's basically laid out your defense beautifully. It's going to say who's in charge of what. It's going to help you also if you've never run a business before. Remember, we also incorporate taking marijuana out of the equation altogether to shield ourselves from personal liability. You want to not have your personal assets on the line if someone slips and falls in your marijuana store and breaks their hip. If you're not incorporated, guess who's on the hook? You are. So we incorporate for those purposes too. So your bylaws are also going to just walk you through really some basic, like, how do I run a business? Am I supposed to have a meeting and when? What if I want Melissa to come on and sit on my board of directors, and what power does she have as doing that? So it's going to teach you as well, and it's a boring document, and I love writing it, but you guys are going to be bored to death reading it. But you need it. You need it, and you want to have it. And to go along with that, you're going to have some other corporate documents like minutes for your board meeting and things like that. So we're going to get you compliant on the state level. And the first question Melissa almost always asks, are you incorporated as a nonprofit mutual benefit corporation? Let the answer be yes. And let me do the articles, because your articles are going to have also specific language that's going to say what you're doing and the law that matches up to why you're doing it. You also need to have your seller's permit. So even though the sale of marijuana remains illegal, even in the state of California, you have a defense to it. And the Board of Equalization has very clearly stated they would love our money. A lot of the statistics and studies that go around that show why we should legalize get pulled from the BOE. So help the cause and help keep yourself out of harm's way in terms of the IRS and the Board of Equalization. They'll audit you too. And what they're going to do is they're going to come in at your busiest hour and they're going to sit there and they're going to calculate your sales and then they're going to multiply that by the hours you're open. So that really may not be a true reflection of what your quarterly taxes should be. Just be on top of it. You can work with a CPA that's going to help you through this. And like Melissa said, we have recommendations. So you've got to get your seller's permit. And again, how we fill that application out, very important, the language that we use. You will also need to get an EIN number with the IRS. That's a little bit scary because it's the IRS and that's federal. The language we use on that application, very different than the language we use on the Board of Equalization, which is under the state of California. Let me do that for you, please. Let me do it for you. What address you use, especially delivery services. You guys are usually, you don't have a storefront where you can list, and we don't want to list anybody's home address on things like this. So let's have that conversation. Let's talk about your corporate structure and your corporate setup to keep you as safe as possible and make Melissa's job as easy as possible. Then Melissa also really talked a lot about membership forms, and again, that's so that you can make sure that everyone is part of your club, your co-op, your closed circle. And that's really what it's for. It's to show that the group of people that have come together to collectively or cooperatively cultivate and then share in the fruits of that labor by whatever way you choose to participate are all in the club. You're in the circle. How do you prove that if you don't have documents to show that, right? So you need to have membership forms. There needs to be an intake process that also proves you've checked everyone as a patient. It's all about the closed loop. The money and the meds have to all move within that closed loop. How big or small that closed loop is, that's up to you, but it has to be a closed loop circuit. And the Attorney General's guidelines and case law are very, very, very clear on that. That's another check you want to make sure Melissa can present to the court. Then we talked a little bit about transportation agreements. So that's basically authorizing Melissa to transport on behalf of ABC Collective. She wants to have that potentially in that law enforcement encounter. It's very helpful in a defense case. Very, 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 very helpful. You also, you may want to have employment agreements if you've got employers or consultants. Again, it's just like any other business. When you have an employee for your other business, you're going to have them sign a contract that states how you're going to pay them, how you're going to compensate them, how this employment agreement is going to terminate, and what are the grounds on which you can fire them so that you don't, the other areas of law still exist, right? You don't want to avail yourself to a wrongful termination suit or something of that nature. So we want to have clear employment agreements. It's just like any other business. And the last thing you definitely want to have in terms of paperwork are something, again, not popular, but you need to have these growers agreements and start using them. Again, you've got to keep track of where the meds are coming from, how much you're paying for them, and that's important as well from a tax perspective because taxes are really tricky, and I'll do my best to touch on it, but there aren't, in terms of your corporate taxes, you can't take as many deductions as your regular, t-shirt shop. But cost of goods is a huge one. So if you're not keeping track of that, you're losing a huge deduction that's going to offset your tax liability. We all have to pay taxes. It's one of the truths in life if you don't want to go to jail. So make sure that you're offsetting your liability just as you would for any other business. So growers agreements are hugely unpopular. Very helpful in your defense to show that there was collective and cooperative cultivation. A lot of the attorneys started drafting these documents when Jovan lost his defense. And part of the reason he lost his defense was because he was the only one willing to, take the stand and say, I was cultivating. And then they said, well, you can't, that's not collective cultivation because you're only one person and you had 1,000 patients. If he would have had some growers agreements that we could maybe have taken, blacked the names out of, or at least the last name, where you had a number to ID your grower, we could have potentially submitted those. But we didn't know. We hadn't seen that scenario arise, and none of us could possibly believe that a judge was actually going to deny this guy his medical marijuana defense. So we learn a lot as things, I'll do a whole Q&A at the end too. We learn a lot as we see, unfortunately, the turmoil that other people have to go through. That would have helped him a lot, but we didn't know.
I have a client, I have more than one client right now dealing with these issues, but one in particular where this person was cultivating for themselves and then growing on behalf of maybe, let's just say, more than one dispensary. I don't think that's illegal. I have no problem with that. I can easily defend that. What's hard is proving that there was some sort of actual agreement because there are no grow agreements in the case. So, while I don't think the activity or the actions are necessarily illegal at all, now there's a burden on me to explain it. So again, it's not necessarily what you're doing, it's just the way you're doing it. It's how do we prove that what you're doing is okay. I think transportation is fine. I really do. I think if you grow for more than one collective, hey, there's no limit on that in the law yet. I think that's fine. Give me the paperwork that shows that it's okay, and I can show it to a judge, show it to a jury, and they'll go, great. But if I don't have it, harder for me, harder for you.
But your grower friends and those growers in the group, you know what I'm talking about. You don't want to put your name to it, and I get it. But you're not doing yourself any favors, and there's a way to continue to sort of engage in what you're doing, but in a safer manner, in a less risky manner. I talked about the closed circuit. Melissa touched on this. I'm going to reemphasize it because it's so crucially important. Your nonprofit status, we have to start to be able to prove that. The reason is that as more Javon Jackson cases go through the circuit courts and come back with appellate decisions, the way that the prosecutors, the DAs, are attacking these cases, it has to change. So they used to be able to get up there and say, you had 500 people, you can only show that 1 or 2 were growing, that's not collective cultivation. Now we have a case that says, BS. You don't have to have every single person with their hand in the soil. Good, that's good. The law is not intended for everyone to grow. It's hard to grow, you may not have the space to grow, you may be too sick to grow. So it's okay. The judges at the appellate levels are getting that. But now the DAs have to change their tactic a little, right? They weren't winning with that argument anymore. So then they started talking about the size of the collector. Well, there's no way you could be closed circuit, and the spirit of the law is that this would be small collectives. I don't remember seeing small or a number anywhere in 215 or 420. Do any of you who've read it?
That's not what the spirits told me.
That's not what that's not what the spirit told us. So they started trying to say, well, if it's too big, you must be doing this illegally. And then another case came down and said, no, BS. Think of Costco, think of the food co-ops. You have hundreds, thousands of people that join these organizations, and they make a monetary contribution to offset the overhead costs associated with producing the goods. So what are the DAs left to do? These crusaders of the devil marijuana, it's so terrible. How are they going to win their cases? And they like to win, and they don't like to lose. We're kind of used to losing sometimes in the non-medical marijuana cases, right? Your hand was in the cookie jar. You broke into the person's house. There's surveillance. Only so much we could do. But these are winnable cases, and what they're really starting to focus in now is this profit issue. And they are starting to look at the numbers and the books, and they didn't have to before. They didn't, because they were able to sort of use these case arguments and scare people into plea deals. And I'm going to talk about the DA and the way that office runs and their conviction rate. So again, they are really starting to put the spotlight on that. And it's more important than ever, even than a year ago or 2 years ago, to keep your financial records in order, to pay your taxes, to make sure that if bookkeeping is not a skill set that you have, I don't personally either, I'm not good with numbers, hire someone to do it for you. This is not an area where you should be skimping and cutting costs and deciding that you could sit there and figure it out yourself. You can't, you won't, you're not going to do a good job, you're going to mess it up, and then Melissa's going to be very upset. She's a really nice person. She's nice, she's funny, she's engaging, she put on a dress today. Make her job easier. There is also dispensary management software out there that a lot of people want to cut costs, they don't want to get it. Don't invent the wheel and decide that you're going to figure out the best record-keeping method for this business. There's too many things that are going on, and your focus is going to be on the patient and the quality of medicine. So get a dispensary management software that's going to track your inventory for you. Remember, every leaf in, every leaf out, you've got to make sure it's in that closed circuit. How are you going to do that if it's on like a scrap paper?
A lot of yellow legal pads. I got a lot of that. A lot of yellow legal pads.
You don't want that, right?
I know.
And it will also track things like when a patient's rec expires, because if their rec expires, they're out of the club and they gotta come back in. That's fine. Most people don't have a problem with that, but a lot of people don't really keep track of when their rec expires or it doesn't. So you can help them. You can have this software that's going to go and show you how to do all this. Get it? It's, again, not a place where you want to cut costs, right? Advertise slowly at first. Don't get don't remodel your storefront location in the beginning. Make sure you have the fundamentals in place so that you can open and stay open as long as possible. This is a game of longevity, and that has to start to be the mind frame now. Unfortunately, we have people out there that are like, live another day, that's fine, but at the end of the day, when all this is said and done and hopefully legalized, you guys want to be the ones standing without a criminal record. So make sure that you do that, and make sure you have copies of your records on site, of course, but also off site somewhere safe. Because if, again, that knock comes and it's an unfortunate day, they're going to take all of it, and Melissa will make the request for it, but it's going to be a while before she gets it, because that's just the nature of the system.
They don't play fair.
They don't. I mean, she'll get it eventually, but you want to also be able to sit down with her in that first meeting and go over all of it so that she can get to work as quickly and efficiently as possible for you. So again, off-site and on-site. And again, just to be clear on what taxes you need to pay. So just like any other job, taxes on any income you derive, right? Your reasonable compensation, you have to pay taxes on that. You're going to be taxed as a C Corp at the IRS level because this nonprofit mutual benefit is a body of the state. It's an entity that exists on the state level. For those of you sophisticated legal minds out there, there's no 501c3 federal tax exemption. You get absolutely zero benefits of being a nonprofit.
Yeah.
The only benefit you get is your filing fees are a little bit less. But other than that, don't get all excited, nonprofit, I'm going to be able to do this and that. You're not. You're going to operate like a C Corp, and you're going to be taxed under very specific rules, which I can talk about a little bit at the end if there's time, but get a CPA to do that for you. And then also remember that if you are, I'm having this question a lot lately, whether your corporation is like physically active or not, you owe $800 a year to the Franchise Tax Board. April 15th, rain or shine, if you're filing extensions on other things, I learned that one the hard way, it doesn't matter. Your $800 is due, and it's due April 15th. And I have a lot of clients that think they don't, like, oh, we're not doing anything for the last few months, we got shut down. You're still on the hook. Pay it. Penalties start to accrue otherwise. And the Franchise Tax Board, they're happy that you're a marijuana corporation. They don't care at all. Just give them their money. So those are and then your sales tax that you need to pay quarterly with your seller's permit. So that's sort of, in a very condensed nutshell, best business practices. I guess next week be teaching a 4-hour class that's really going to go super nitty gritty into this. So if you're needing a refresher, or there's flyers in the back, Nicole is not in here.
Not here.
There are flyers in the back. Legal Cannabis Institute. Sign up with her, and I'm going to really get in the weeds, so to speak. I mean, we're going to talk about everything in a lot of depth. So that's just, again, really general, but there's lots of good information to talk about here. So that's our best business practices, and I promise to do questions at the end. Now let's go back to 6th grade a little bit and talk about Civics 101, who's in charge, and what the hell is happening in San Diego right now. Everyone's really excited about this new ordinance, but we have to understand how we got to this place where we have this new ordinance in front of us, and how amazing it is, and what we need to do. So this is my call to action to all of you. April 22nd, 2 p.m., City Hall, there is a wonderful marijuana ordinance in front of the City Council. All of you should have picked up from the back a printout of the City Council members, their email, their phone number, and what areas they represent. They're going to hear public comment on this ordinance. A birdie from the mayor's office told me very loudly, we need to have representative patients from each district there, organized and ready to speak. It's very, very important. We need 5 votes to get it passed, and it's a bit of a tough road to 5. And I'll go into that, who's thumbs up, who's a maybe, and who's probably not going to get us there. But we need to be there, and we need to be there dressed professionally.
Could you say the time?
2 p.m. It's on ACE's website, the Facebook event. It's really important that this is kind of San Diego's last chance to get this right because of the history that's led up to it. So, let's talk about how we got there, and to understand that you need to know who's who and what power they have. So, again, this is a little boring, I know. I really like it. That's the nerdy, political part of me. But first we have the mayor. We have Mayor Bob Fellner. Everyone should clap for Mayor Bob Fellner. We love Bob Fellner. He is known to be a little bit of a loose cannon, and he is known to sort of not give a shit what anybody thinks. That's good for us. And he's a former congressman. What San Diego has is what's called the strong mayor form of government. And we converted to that in 2006 from what was called the city manager type of government, where the mayor was more of a ceremonial figure. He didn't really get to have any authority. There was basically someone called the city manager who was appointed by city council, and he handled the affairs of the city. Which one is better is a conversation for another day. Right now we have the strong mayor form of government, and what that means basically is he runs the show. He's the CEO. He's the man in charge. He calls all the shots, and he, has a lot of say about what goes on. And he basically can create law and take it to the city council. He can fire people. He can hire people. He even created actually 2 positions that have never been in the mayor's office before. One is a position to deal with open government, transparency. He really believes in transparency of government, and that's not something we've seen in San Diego ever. I don't know ever in the history that I've studied so far. And then he also created a position for a wonderful woman named Lee Burdick to be the special manager of special projects and legal affairs. And I said, Lee, what's the point of your position? Tell me, explain to me what it is you do and why you exist. She's a check on the city attorney. Who is the city attorney? The city attorney is a gentleman by the name of Dan Goldsmith. He has not been a friend to this community. He does not like medical marijuana, and before Mayor Fellner was elected, he worked very closely with Mayor Sanders. And Mayor Sanders kind of allowed him to run things the way he wanted to. And he wanted to work with the district attorney, Bonnie DeManis, to shut down the dispensaries. The first thing that Mayor Filner did when he got elected was he said, stop shutting these guys down. You can't shut them down simply because they don't have a business license if you won't give them a business license. Stop sending out your code enforcement officers to shut these down. But the problem was it was too late, and not by any fault of his own. He was elected in June, and all of this happened before June. That's when we started to see a lot of people open up again. These people haven't come to see me, they haven't come to see Melissa, which means they're all operating out of compliance. But they're kind of getting the benefit of this in-between time right now. But they're not doing it right.
Until the knock comes.
Until the knock comes. But he basically said, you have to cease and desist with this nonsense, and we are going to create a medical marijuana ordinance, and we are going to attempt to get this right. And I will promise to get you guys this as soon as I can. And he put together with Lee Burdick at the helm, again, we can't say enough praise for her, so she really is wonderful. She took the time to learn the issues, understand the issues, get the issues. And she is, again, a progressive leader. We can talk about progressive politics later, why that's different than liberal. But it's more action-based, right? It's about actually doing what you say you're going to do instead of just believing in a paradigm of thoughts. And that's what Filner is. He's a progressive leader, and he put forward this group of people. Melissa was there, I was there, Eugene was there, Adela was there. Some really key people to flesh these issues out and create this new ordinance. The ordinance is basically a law that can be enacted that's going to go in the municipal code, and basically more or less it's going to amend zoning or deal with monetary things. It's regulatory in nature. So that's what we want, that's what we have before us, before the city council. And the city council is like the legislative body, right? They're going to enact the law. They're going to say, yes, we want this, or no, we don't. They are a very powerful group of people. And there are currently 8 of them, although there are 9 seats. And that's where things start to get sticky for us on April 22nd. Is a 4-4 is a loss, and we only have 8 people right now. You have to have 5. So does everyone have their, quickly their little printout? Just really quickly, we'll go, I'm not going to get into what community they represent, but I want to kind of give you an idea of where they stand. The first you have Sherry Leitner. She's a solid maybe. She's District 1. I think that we have an opportunity to change her mind, but she voted for some of the stricter things in the old ordinance, and I'll do like a side by side in a minute. Kevin Faulkner, District 2. He's not our friend. Again, that doesn't mean that we should not have as many patients from District 2 get up there and say, hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. I am a resident of District 2. My illness is, and I use medical cannabis because, and I need a dispensary in this neighborhood because. It doesn't need to be any more than that, but they need to hear from as many constituents as possible. A lot of people think, oh, just get up and call. But they don't care. I don't live in their district. They kind of just don't care about me. That's fine. It doesn't hurt my feelings. District 3, Todd Gloria. Yay. We love Todd Gloria. I personally am in love with Todd Gloria. He is my professional crush. I'll say it now. He's wonderful, and he's a solid yes, right? District 4, that's our vacant district. We have 2 potential candidates. If you're interested and you live in District 4, talk to me at the break, and I'll break it down for you. But in the interest of time and answering people's questions, I'll move along. District 5, Mark Piercy. He's new. We think he's a yes. That's good. We need that to get to our 5. But maybe he might have a few concessions he wants to throw in. Hopefully not. But that's good. So we like Piercy, but that doesn't mean we don't need representatives from District 5. Lori Zapp, District 6. She's not our friend either. She definitely is not our friend at all. We don't know why. We're nice people, but she does not like medical marijuana, and she's the head of the Land Use and Housing Committee. So once this ordinance is on the floor, there are potential other actions that could be taken. I believe that they're interested in pushing it through because they had such a, in the history I'll go over, you'll see that they just dealt with this for a long time. I don't think there's a lot of interest in dragging it out. It's either going to pass or it's not, and it's either going to be implemented or it's not. And there are 2 readings. When we do an ordinance, there's 2 readings to make it law, and it's usually law 30 days after. 7, Scott Sherman. probably a no, but maybe he's a very conservative guy, businessman. So you would think you could maybe appeal to him on that level, but he's probably a no, and I don't think that we're gonna change his mind. David Alvarez is another one we can clap for. We love David Alvarez. He's wonderful, very progressive, engaged council member, District 8. He's a yes, and Marty Emerald. We also really like her too. She's a yes. So we have 3 solid yeses. We have and then 2 maybes, but we need both those maybes to be yeses. So it's really important that you find a way to professionally voice your opinion under the district you're in, and get other people to come. So if you don't know anyone that lives in Kearney Mesa, that's okay, maybe you do. And make sure that you tell them they need to show up on this day. I mean, this is the direct advice from the mayor's office to me. Get people from each district there to get up and speak and say, my name is, I'm from district blah, blah, blah. My condition is, I use medical marijuana because, and this is the area I need it in because. Simple. Should not take more than 25 seconds. So those are your city council people. Jan Goldsmith, again, we sort of touched on him. He's dealing with the civil stuff. He's the one that was shutting everyone down. Mayor Filner really likes to remind people that it's a strong mayor form of government and that he's in charge and that the city is Jan Goldsmith's client. I think that Jan sometimes maybe forgets that a little bit. So he sort of really had the wind taken out of his sail, but he was the one that was helping city council draft and things of that nature. But now he has a direct order from Filner to basically get on board with medical marijuana. I am, and it can help the city. So he can't shut them down anymore the way that he was. But if this ordinance passes, and you're not compliant with the permitting requirements and the state requirements, he can come back in. So that's where all our speakeasy friends either need to get on board and come visit us and let us walk them through the process, or they'll get shut down. And they may be open a few months before, but you know, at the end of the day, eventually it will catch up to them, and longevity should be the goal of any business plan, any successful business plan. And last but not least, again, you have Bonnie DeManis, the district attorney. She, you know, she also is not a fan of medical marijuana. Yeah. And when you had Mayor Sanders at the helm, you know, I think that there was I won't go so far as to say an alliance, but an alliance between the city attorney and the district attorney and even the U.S. attorney to sort of information share. And Goldsmith could find his way to any dispensary and get in through code enforcement, and then he could kind of, I'm not saying this is what happened, but I'm saying maybe it is what was happening, and maybe it's not happening anymore. There was a lot of information sharing going on. Again, the DA's office, they have one of the highest conviction rates. I had to look online to find this. 94% is their conviction rate. And the reason is because they will offer good plea bargains. And you don't want an attorney that is interested in pleading you out. I don't think there's anything wrong with public defenders. I think they're smart and it's a hard job to get. But, you know, Melissa can have a stack of files this high. That guy or gal has a stack of cases this high. Okay? There's a difference between the kind of time and energy and emotions that she is going to be, you know, devoted to writing and defending you than the other guy. And it's not because he's not good or smart or he doesn't want to, but it's kind of the nature of the job that he has.
And I just want to I do want to plug the public defender's office because they
are good.
There are a lot of names that you can call them, but it's an unbelievably hard job to get. It's not the bottom of the class people in the least. It's very much the top of the class people that get those jobs. However, the difference between a public defender and a private attorney, they're good, they're bad, they're in between. It's the amount of time that they can devote to your case. A public defender has anywhere from 50 to several hundred cases on their desk at a time. And that's just the law. So you're not always going to get the call back with a public defender.
And you know, you want the attorney that is not afraid to go to trial. And again, a lot of these, like Melissa said, there's a continuum for everything in life. And a lot of these private attorneys also, they're more interested in pleading you out where they don't know. So they see that 50 pounds, well, we know and you know it's not 50 pounds because they weigh the concrete slab as well. But if you don't have the right attorney to defend you, or the one that's willing to push and go into court, we're about to go into court on Tuesday for like our 5th time asking for this evidence review. Other attorneys are like, I got other things to do. They don't want to go 5 times, and so they'll say, we'll get the evidence review and we get it. No, we're going to fight to make sure that we get that review at the time that we deserve it. Again, it's just a different caliber of the willingness to push forward. Don't help them with that 94, conviction rate. They like it. They pride themselves on it. If taking a deal is the right thing for you, that's okay. No one's going to shame you or make you feel bad. But you want an attorney that's going to walk you through that process and figure out what's right for you. That's Melissa. So let's talk about the ordinance, right? Like, what is it? Why is it good? Why is it bad? How is it different than the other one? Do you guys want me to kind of go through the history of it, or just go into what it is? Basically, we had an ordinance, and there were a group of people that said, we don't like this ordinance. So they went and gathered a bunch of signatures and put that before City Council, and City Council said, you have enough signatures, so we have to basically repeal it now. Once that ordinance was repealed, that was the green light for Mr. Goldsmith to start shutting everybody down, because now it was clear that there were no zoning laws. And when we're talking again about the ordinance, we're talking about local law. We're talking about City of San Diego. If you live in Del Mar, I can't help you. Well, I can help you, but you're not going to fall. You're not going to fall under the ordinance. And it's important that when you get to City Council, you show love for this ordinance. I mean, this ordinance is the best thing you have ever seen in your entire life, because they're pissed. They are the woman scorned, right? They have not forgotten all the work that they put into this ordinance before, and they felt, whether we agree or not, that it was the best they could do, that it was a starting place. They were not pleased. And I kind of, Adele, you were in a lot of these newer meetings, sitting down with them. The first thing we kind of needed to do was apologize for the people who took a different approach. So we love this ordinance, right?
Yes.
We love it. It's beautiful. It's amazing.
And remember, it's a start. It's not set in stone. So if it winds up being, oh wow, this part of the ordinance really isn't working, we can go back and change it and amend it. But it's a starting point.
We will. And I already know what's going to get people excited, or if it doesn't, I'll tell you when to get excited. There's one thing in there that probably is not workable, and we'll talk about it. But politics is a funny animal, right? I discussed certain points of this ordinance that I thought maybe didn't fully legally comply with certain aspects of the law with the mayor's office, and they said, we know. We're smart. We know. This is what we need to do to get it passed, and then if there's a legal crusader out there that wants to challenge it, by all means, let that one portion be struck down. But this is what we need to get public opinion in our favor. This is what we need to get those 5 votes. If having this in there is going to make, Todd Gloria feel better and more confident about passing this and giving his yes, we'll put it in there.
Yes.
Put it in there. They get it. Remember, this is a political landfill. You are still dealing with reefer madness and lots of stereotypes that we all know are not true. You have to play by the rules of the game. And the rules of the game are, we love this ordinance, we love everything that's in it. So let's talk really quickly about the differences, and then I'll go into Q&A. So the first main difference is the old ordinance refers to all dispensaries as medical marijuana consumer cooperatives. You can be a collective or a cooperative, and if you're interested in incorporating, we'll talk about the differences later. They're very minute. And we'll discuss them at a later time, or talk to me after. But it meant that you had to operate in a really certain way that most people weren't operating in, but it didn't add any protections, and it didn't really make what you were doing more or less compliant in terms of what Melissa needed to do for the state. So we went in there, Eugene, myself, Adela, a bunch of people, and we said, we need a new definition. We need to call this something different. And so we replaced it with a much broader definition, which I haven't memorized yet, so I apologize for reading it. But we're now just going to call them medical marijuana dispensaries. You don't now necessarily have to be a cooperative, which means you have to do extra things under the corporations code, and it's just silly, and it's a lot of time, and it's complicated. You don't want to do it. So now it just basically means a use, and again, we're really talking about zoning. This ordinance is talking about where you guys can operate and how in the city. And because there wasn't a place before, Jan Goldsmith came and he sent his workers out and shut everybody down because you weren't operating in a place where you were allowed. So this is just about place. People try and expand it and think it's more. It's where you can operate, the physical location. Can you be in this building or not? So it means a use where qualified patients, persons with identification cards, and designated primary caregivers of qualified patients and persons with identification cards are able to associate as an incorporated association within the city of San Diego in order to collectively or cooperatively provide medical marijuana for use exclusively by their registered members in accordance with the law. Much broader, much better for you guys. The next thing it did was it switched from the actual pieces of paper that you need to submit to the city. What you needed before was a conditional use permit at a process level 4. Very complicated, and the person who actually got to make that decision was the planning commission. We don't want that, right? We want a staffer who's going to look and see, yes, 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 yes. That's what you want. So it got switched over to either a neighborhood development permit or a neighborhood use permit. Minor differences in terms of like what you actually need to file with the city, and a process 2. So you're going to submit your application. A staffer is going to look at it. They're going to approve it or deny it. And if you want to disagree with their opinion, if they deny you, basically, no one's going to appeal an approval, then that gets appealed to the planning commission. But it's not this commission, this board that has to make the decision now. In theory, hopefully that means it'll go faster too. So that's a really good thing, and we were really, really happy about that, and that's something that we all fought really, really hard for. Another huge thing was there's these sensitive receptors or types of businesses that the community may or may not want dispensaries to be around. Many people in here probably think they should be able to be everywhere. Liquor stores are everywhere. Who cares, right? Filner, part of what makes him actually really good is he's great at balancing needs of different groups. So he recognizes that there are people out there that maybe don't want this next to their kid's school. And state law actually says you can't be 600 feet from a school. So this ordinance took out the distance requirements for churches, libraries, and youth-serving facilities. And what the hell was a youth-serving facility? That's what we said. We were like, who's going to decide that? And why is it in there? If it can't be near schools and it can't be near child care centers, like, isn't that kind of enough? Like, what else are we missing here? And we didn't want to leave that up to some staff or planning commission to make that determination. So we fought really, really hard for that one to be taken out, and it was, I think, a huge and one of the victories I'm proudest of is getting that youth-serving facility out of there. So those are no longer distance separation requirements. Another thing that happened is we redefined the school to be a narrower definition, basically, for lack of better words. It's basically your K through 12. Before it was like a lot of other weird things could have been thrown in there, and it just kind of made everything a school. So that's huge as well. Here's the one that people are not so happy about. It's going to require the permitted dispensaries to only sell medical cannabis to people with the medical marijuana identification card, the MMIC. This is for the council members that have a hard time understanding that patient doesn't just mean cancer patient. They want to, they really want to make sure that that it's really true patients. And again, I don't think it's for us to get into the conversation of who's a true patient and who isn't, but the perception out there is that I don't see anyone who looks, terribly ill or forlorn right now. So you guys are all not legitimate patients. I don't agree with it. There are a lot of people and groups that have problems with this particular clause. Let it pass and let's deal with that later, okay? It's really important that people don't get stuck up on this one. There are potential legal arguments that could say because the card is voluntary, that dispensaries should be able to distribute to patients and the rec should be enough. Let's deal with it later. Let's get it passed. This was put in there for very specific council members to get their yes. Very specific, very tactical, very political. Let it slide for now. We can deal with it later.
So we filled the county coffers for now.
What's that?
So we filled the county coffers by going down and paying $100.
Again, we think you should have it anyhow. Other people disagree, but let's deal, again, I really want to make clear that we should not get stuck on that. We can deal with that legally later. And the last couple things, again, there'll be an annual permitting fee of $5,000. A liquor license costs a shit ton more.
That's in addition to the NUP process 2 fee, which is only about $287. Well, I got the email from Dave Potter. I know, but
It's,
roughly,
that's
it
unclear.
could go more.
It's yeah, it could go. So there may be some additional permitting fees,
Yeah.
like actually what you need when you apply
Yeah.
for the permit. I think that's something I myself am also slightly unclear